Guys, what is happening with USAID right now? The Doge Caucus Chair, Joni Ernst, just accused USAID of funding gain-of-function research in Wuhan. Here are all the details, guys. I'm going to show you the clip. We're going to break it down. Check it out.
The government agencies coordinating aid efforts should be eager to share the details about how their use of taxpayer money makes the world a better place. Yet the hard truth is, as we have seen, USAID has been out of control for decades. There's no shortage of questionable USAID projects. For example, a $20 million grant to the Sesame Workshop nonprofit to create an Iraqi version of Sesame Street. More than $9 million intended for civilian food and medical supplies in Syria ended up in the hands of violent terrorists. And another one, $27 million, was designated to so-called reintegration gift bags, which may even include a Barbie doll for deported Central Americans. There was also $68,000 awarded for dance classes in none other than Wuhan, China. And after being stonewalled by USAID for years, I learned funds meant for economic relief in Ukraine were instead paying for Ukrainian models and designers to attend fashion weeks in New York City, London, and Paris. And Mr. Chair, I ask unanimous consent to enter my oversight letters and USAID's responses into the record. Thank you, Mr. Chair. USAID is notorious for exploiting legal loopholes, as my COVID-19 origins investigations exposed. By law, all federal spending is required to be publicly available on usaspending.gov. We've known for a while that Dr. Fauci used NIH funding to finance bat coronavirus research at the Wuhan Institute of Virology, but it took the watchdog White Coat Waste Project to expose evidence that USAID was funding it too. Wow. In fact, the bulk of the money came from USAID. Yet no grants to the Chinese lab appeared on usaspending.gov. It was hidden from the public through layers of unreported subgrants and subawards. Thankfully, my push to defund EcoHealth Alliance was successful, and the group is now barred from receiving U.S. government grants. But this is why my TRACS Act must become law to prevent money being sent to China, the Taliban, or any other foreign adversary. Every grant recipient must be disclosed to ensure accountability, and we shouldn't stop there. My bipartisan Stop Secret Spending Act, introduced with Ranking Member Peters, would add additional transparency to federal spending. So, Mr. Schellenberger, I'll start with you, please. Why is USAID so secretive about how it spends billions of taxpayer dollars? Is it to avoid the public outrage over the waste, or is there something more nefarious there?
Well, thank you, Senator. And first of all, thank you for your leadership in bringing transparency and accountability to aid and the funding there. Obviously, this example you just gave of the Wuhan Institute of Virology is incredible. I mean, the fact it appears that the U.S. government funded the creation of the virus that caused the global pandemic. Mm-hmm. We also know that President Barack Obama had banned that research, and that Anthony Fauci had created a workaround to get around that and move that research to the Wuhan Institute of Virology. Had there been some transparency about it, I think some questions would have been raised. One of the claims, of course, that was made right after Senator Cotton raised the idea that maybe it did leak from a lab. Washington Post claimed it was a debunked conspiracy theory. Anybody who had just Googled virus lab leak would have discovered that there had been years and years, maybe decades, of news stories about viruses leaking from labs. It's a very common thing, and of course, it was one of the main reasons that we wanted to end that risky gain-of-function research, because we knew it was the high risk of something leaking from a lab. So I think I applaud your work. We need much more transparency with it. Mm-hmm. As I mentioned before, I do think that some part of that motivation may have been to hide regime change operations that were run by USAID in concert with the State Department. If you're going to be doing regime change operations, those belong in the State Department and with the CIA, not in a charitable organization, because if you genuinely want people to trust in vaccines or other public health measures, it's a terrible thing for them to believe that maybe it's part of some counterterrorism operation or some manipulation by the U.S. government that has some political motivation or some regime change motivation. If it's truly, truly charitable support for things like, for good causes, then there has to be a firewall between that and what the CIA and the State Department are doing.
Yeah, transparency. It is so important.
Okay, guys, now we're going to finish this because I'm telling you, is this blowing your mind the way it's blowing my mind? Absolutely crazy stuff. Wanted to pause real quick, though, say thank you for watching, guys. Thank you for hitting that like button. It helps out with YouTube algorithm. I don't understand it, but I appreciate the support. Senator Joni Ernst just dropped a bombshell at the Senate Homeland Security Committee hearing. USAID has allegedly been hiding spending through unreported subgrants and subawards, making it impossible for taxpayers to see where their money is going. Why is a taxpayer-funded agency trying so hard to cover its tracks? And then some of the numbers she gave just a second ago. Guys, did you catch those? USAID has a long history of questionable spending. $20 million for an Iraqi version of Sesame Street. $9 million in food and medical aid that ended up in the hands of terrorists. $27 million for reintegration gift bags, which allegedly included Barbie dolls for deported Central Americans. $68,000 for a dance class in Wuhan, China. Yeah, Wuhan. Taxpayer-funded trips for Ukrainian models, designers to attend New York, London, Paris Fashion Weeks. Why are we sending money to fund fashion shows and dance classes in foreign countries where Americans are struggling with inflation and debt? Okay, guys, you don't want to miss the rest of this. I'm telling you, it just gets crazier.
I'll continue with you, and then Mr. Ruger, you can add your thoughts as well. But absent a forensic audit by the Trump administration, do you think we would have ever known the full depth of USAID's spending or misspending in this case?
No, I mean, this is, obviously the administration is pursuing a model that Silicon Valley has used for a long time, which is that you do need to make changes to actually see what's going on. And so, I think it's an incredible moment of reform. I wish it were bipartisan. The last time of serious reform in the United States was, of course, in the mid-1970s. We had the Church Committee hearings exactly 50 years ago this year that were bipartisan, that revealed much of the abuses of power by the CIA, by the FBI. It led to a set of reforms, including greater whistleblower protections. I do hope that Democrats will join you, Senator, in pushing for those reforms, because it's obviously in the interest of all of us, all Americans. And, in most of the past, the FBI had been weaponized against leftists in the United States. It's only recent that we see the deep state mostly targeting right-wing populists. But that this sort of commitment, it's an all-American commitment to not letting the state be abused for political reasons. And I think next time, you never know, it could be weaponized against the left again. And so I hope that Democrats will join you in making this renewed push. And I applaud the Republicans for taking up the mantle of pushing for greater disclosure, greater transparency, greater accountability. And I just think some overall clarity about what does the United States want its interaction with the world to be? Is this still the same? Are we still in the period after World War II to today, or do we need to kind of rebalance our relationship? I mean, I think the public voted for a rebalancing towards a more America First agenda. I also don't think Americans want to completely withdraw from the world. But again, I do think that some basic hygiene is in order in terms of separating out what is genuinely charitable or development activities from what is regime change, censorship, disinformation, information control activities.
Right. I agree. Thank you. And Mr. Ruger, do you have thoughts there as well?
Sure. So I think what DOGE is doing really is a form of creative destruction, right? So it's breaking through the status quo and getting these issues at the front of the Americans' minds and the front of the minds of elites here in Washington. Too often, things are continued to kind of be on autopilot. And it's very hard, as you well know. I mean, there's so many issues that could be focused on. The federal government does so much that to actually focus our attention on these things, to put them under the microscope, is challenging, even when it's pretty obvious to to some of the experts out there. But how do they get that voice up there? And I think what Elon Musk has been able to do, and again, through President Trump's leadership, is to make sure that this doesn't disappear, that there is sustained attention to it. And that is going to mean that some messiness will occur, right? You're going to have to put holds on things to make sure that we're not spending wastefully. And I think that is, on net, is going to be valuable as we try to reform a federal government, particularly in light of the fact that we're $36 trillion in debt. We are spending my children's money and your children and grandchildren's money. We're spending their money now. And we better make sure that if we're going to do that, because sometimes it is necessary to take out debt, for example, for war purposes of fighting wars, that we're doing that for good reason. And I think that means that we really need to be really kind of, I think, rinsing out the kind of towel of government spending and make sure that only what survives is necessary.
Oh, thank you. And there are so many analogies that we could use. You know, we're breaking up the boulder of federal government, and there are some gems that we will be able to pull out of there, but the rest is rubble, and it needs to go away. And I know from the chairman, Chairman Paul, Senator Johnson, Senator Langford, and I have all engaged in these efforts, each of us, for over a decade now, in attempting to identify the waste, the fraud within our federal government, trying to get those reforms over the finish line. And it wasn't until we had the Trump presidency and the appointment of those in the Department of Government Efficiency with Elon Musk that we actually have the platform now to get it done. So I'm really grateful that we have that opportunity to do that now. And I know I'm way over, but we'll go ahead and close out. But I'll give you some closing thoughts as well. And I just want to be clear, you know, as we're talking about this, that there are many other groups that are supported by USAID that are doing great work. As I said, there are some gems amongst the rubble. There are programs that help us care for orphans. There are programs that help us care for people with HIV. Those are important programs. But imagine how much more good work could be done if we use those dollars that instead ended up enriching terrorists and mad scientists in adversarial countries. So after keeping its spending records hidden from Congress and taxpayers, USAID employees are now protesting the review of the agency's records by President Trump's Department of Government Efficiency. It is pretty outrageous. It's no surprise that Washington insiders are more upset at DOGE for trying to stop wasteful spending than at USAID for misusing their constituents' tax dollars. The question that we really should be asking at this point isn't why USAID's grants are being scrutinized, but why it took so long.
All right, guys. So let's jump into this and break it down, talk about it. Wow. But first of all, do me a big favor, hit that thumbs up, like button. It helps out with the channel. And guys, if you're not a subscriber and you've watched all the way to this point, hit the subscribe button. Subscribe button. Join the difference. I don't think you're going to see this stuff on CNN. I don't think you're going to see this on the Associated Press. This is the biggest revelation that I just got out of that video. USAID was allegedly funneling money into gain-of-function research at the Wuhan Institute of Virology. We already knew Dr. Fauci's NIH was involved, but new reports are now showing that the bulk of the money actually came from USAID, and it was deliberately hidden from public records. If this is true, guys, the U.S. government played a direct role in funding the creation of the virus that caused the global pandemic. How is this not a national scandal? Historically, both Democrats and Republicans have pushed for transparency and government accountability. So why are so many politicians staying silent on this? The last major government transparency reform came 50 years ago during the Church Committee hearings, which exposed abuse by the CIA and the FBI. Senator Ernst and other Republicans are now picking up the torch to expose USAID's actions. But where are the Democrats on this? This shouldn't be about party politics. It's about taxpayer money being misused behind closed doors. Senator Ernst successfully pushed to defund EcoHealth Alliance, one of the organizations allegedly involved in funding Wuhan research. She's now introducing the TRACS Act, which would ban U.S. government funds from going to China, the Taliban, and any other foreign adversary. Should USAID continue to operate without major reforms, or is it time, guys, to start cutting funding? I got some questions for y'all guys to leave down in the comments. Think about this. Do you think that USAID should be defunded or reformed? Which one, defunded or reformed? Why do you think the government keeps hiding spending records from the public? Would you support the TRACS Act to prevent U.S. funds from going to adversaries like China and the Taliban? And how do you feel? Just let me know, guys. Let me know how you feel about your U.S. taxpayer money being used for fashion shows, dance classes, and Barbie dolls. Let me know what you think about that. This is your money we're talking about, guys. What do you think about this USAID spending scandal? This is ridiculous. Drop a comment below. Let's talk about it. Should we defund USAID? Should there be stricter transparency laws? I want to hear your thoughts. Make sure to like, share, subscribe so you don't miss the next big story, guys. And I'll see you very soon with another update. Take it easy.